listeners. So good morning and good evening, good afternoon, everyone. This is the ToC show, and today we've got up in, at least in my left-hand corner here, we've got Derrick Brooke, who's coming to us from Okinawa. Is that right? Did I get that right? Okinawa. You just told me a few minutes ago. You think I would be able to learn quicker than that. Okinawa in Japan. Lovely. And it's nice to see there. I see we've got a few people, two others at least, dialing in from Japan, someone in Belgium, which is pretty cool. And we've got Australia. We're going quite international here today, and I'm just clicking to let the last few come in. Okay, so, right. Yeah, here we go. ToC, the ToC show, and today Derrick is speaking to us from Japan, where he works for the US Air Force, and he teaches and facilitates and trains and stuff aircraft maintenance people to do ToC stuff. And so this is just going to be a chat, really, between the two of us. And if anyone else feels like coming in and joining us, you're more than welcome in the chat. Otherwise, just type stuff away and I will read stuff out. And I'm just going to come in here and spotlight the two of us. There we go. Okay, cool. So, Derrick, right, it's all up to you now. The entire reputation of the US Air Force is in your hands. What on earth? What tell me? The world that you guys live in is so different to the kind of world I work in. Tell me a bit about your history, would you?
Yeah. So, how far back do we want to go? I mean,
well,
grew up in Northern California. I'm from Northern California, a little town called Paradise, California, and grew up there, bounced around a little bit. My dad was in the Air Force, but spent the majority of my time in Paradise, California, and joined immediately out of high school way back in 2003. So I've been doing this now for over 18 years.
Wow.
This is my fourth assignment out here in Okinawa, Japan. Before I was in North Carolina, Little Rock, and then I did 12 years in Spokane, Washington, which is where I moved from Spokane out here to Okinawa.
Okay, cool. Very, very good. Okay, cool. So aircraft maintenance, did you get your hands dirty at one stage?
Yes, absolutely. Came in as a C-130 crew chief and worked in the what we call the isochronal inspection dock. So bringing an aircraft in, pulling all the panels off of it, breaking it down, inspecting it, lubricating it, fixing all the things that we find wrong on it, putting it all back together, doing all the operation checks on it so that we make sure it works properly before giving it back to our flight line maintainers so that they can fly and continue executing the mission. Okay. So really, that process is really important to the longevity of the aircraft that we have.
I was just going to say that. Probably it feels like it. Yeah. Otherwise, it's like my bike chain that I forget to oil all the time, and then I take it and have to buy a new one all the time, and that's not good. But I imagine in terms of keeping your stock of actually operational aircraft, reasonably quick turnaround, get stuff in, get it sorted, get it back out again is hugely important too.
Yeah, absolutely. Aircraft availability is one of the big things that we talk about from the supervision leadership aspect of what one of our main goals is to provide aircraft to the mission. And so if we have these aircraft in these inspection processes for lengthy amount of times, then we're taking away from that aircraft availability piece.
Right. Yep. That makes sense. Okay, cool. So I want to ask more questions about your, the stuff on the ground and stuff now, but sure. Not just yet. So ToC, aircraft maintenance, US Air Force. I know there's a lot of stuff going on because we've had Chris Pettingill talk on here before.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on. That the US Air Force has, at least in parts, embraced ToC. Could you just tell us a little bit more about the bigger picture?
Yeah. So try to not make this too lengthy of a story, but so back in our what the process I explained, the isochronal inspection process, is what we would call like an intermediate level inspection. We also have depot level maintenance inspections, which are more robust, even more detail is put in, and it takes a longer amount of time. And ToC kind of started in the Air Force in that depot level area, being implemented there with some good deal of success there. And then I think I want to say it was around 2018, the talk started happening that, hey, let's see if we can make this work out in the field level. So where our maintainers are out on the ground making the mission happen every day, can we utilize ToC there? Then I was fortunate enough to be out in Spokane, Washington, and we were chosen to be one of the first 3 test beds for theory of constraints implementation in the Air Force.
Right. Okay, cool. So sort of almost grassroots, one area gets success, that sort of trickles up, people hear good things, and then you've certainly got the scale to actually then need to grow and find benefit from doing that. So I think you've got, was it Goldratt Consulting that you've been working with?
Yes. So Headquarters Air Force contracted Goldratt Consulting to come out, and we had a group of 3 consultants come out. Sridhar Chandra, Josh Gilbert, and Eric Palmer came out and did a 4 to 5 month consult with us, taught us some ToC concepts, helped us understand what our goals were, identifying the problems that we needed to attack, and then helped us with some solution design and let us just kind of, think through these things on our own, come up with a plan, and then go out and execute it. And they were there to help us, when things went wrong, because it's going to happen, right? We talk about theory of constraints in this perfect world scenario when we're sitting here talking about it face to face, but when it's actually time to go out and execute it, things aren't going to work. So it takes a lot of deliberate focus and a lot of just sustained efforts to actually make it work the way we designed it to.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. That's a recurring thing that actually sometimes ToC is so obvious, people just think like that anyway. But the moment you add complexity, you've got to become problem solvers. Otherwise, the out of the book stuff is you get taught it at a level you're supposed to understand the concepts, but yeah, when you apply it, it becomes a practice of ToC rather than just the theory. Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's good. Okay. So I'm wondering if you could paint a little bit of a picture of, as much as I know there's some things you can't say.
Sure.
But can you paint a bit of a picture of what your job involves and how you work with other people? Because I know it's like quite facilitative. There's a bit of teaching and there's a bit of hands-on problem solving. But could you describe that? Well, I just opened my window.
Yeah.
It's too hot.
So out here in Okinawa, I run our maintenance group, which is every maintainer on the base, on the installation, falls under our maintenance group. And so I run our what my team has dubbed the process innovation team, because we are working with getting people on the path towards Lean Six Sigma green belts, black belts, and we're also teaching theory of constraints concepts. And then we work with what the Air Force calls spark cells, innovation labs, to help people take these fantastic ideas and actually put them into practice, turning dreams into realities, as we always say. So our process innovation team does, we're kind of a three-headed monster. And I lead the CPI and the theory constraints portions. So,
Okay.
And all that started really, as far as the theory constraint stuff started back before my time in Okinawa with, Alex Pagano, Bill Ray, who was the maintenance group commander at the time, David Barton, finding out what other bases were doing around the Air Force, and then digging into some theory constraint stuff and saying, hey, this is cool. Let's bring this on. Let's see if we can try it out. And they had a great deal of success. And then from there, we're able to get Goldratt Consulting to come out here to Okinawa, Japan, where I was able to embed with the two consultants, Vinny Montero and Austin Kavanaugh, to, work more with them as almost like a quasi consultant for them, and do all the interviewing, the data pulling, scheduling to brief leadership teams, scheduling to bring a team in and see the project from start to finish. So that was a really great opportunity for my team and I. And then from there, when they left, we developed a theory of constraints fundamentals course.
Right.
And so we teach that course twice a month, and it's essentially just, we've highlighted about 4 concepts that we really like to teach to our maintainers, because we think there's a lot of benefit added and it's simple to understand. And so just giving them tools, right? The whole idea of the courses is to empower them by giving them extra tools for their tool belt, because we have a lot of really smart folks out here all across the Air Force. And so the more we can empower them with tools to keep making effective change and to keep making us a better Air Force is in everybody's best interest.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. So there would have been an initial period where you come in and you go, okay, let's put this on with our bottleneck spotting glasses. We look at the thing and we just see the world a bit differently. And you guys look around, and presumably at a quite high level, you then had to make changes to I guess you went through the whole drum buffer rope kind of angle.
Right.
Or is it more project based, or a mixture of those? Or
so as far as the courses that we teach go, or
no, the actual, I'm presuming when you first sort of started to switch there, you made some changes quite a high level, and then now you're more into education and more of an education and keeping it running kind of phase. So there was an initial sort of intervention where you changed a few things around?
Yeah, so the folks I mentioned before, Bill Ray, Alex Pagano, Dave Barton, and there's some others, Dan Browett, Tyler Gibson out there, that they created this really genius way using drum buffer rope to get our aircraft down on the ground, refueled, looked at, and back up in the air as soon as possible. And it broke records out here for how many aircraft we could actually put up in the air. So that was a great success. So that kind of started like the ToC storm here at Kadena, where people start hearing about work in process, and people start hearing about full kitting and whip and queue and all those things. And so people start talking it, but when Goldratt came in, it became even more, because we worked with a different set of aircraft out here, and we helped them with their aircraft availability piece, another 4-month project, getting their aircraft availability numbers up. And then we're sustaining that right as we speak. But from there, because the rumor mill spread, hey, this is what we're supposed to do with ToC, this is what WIP is, and not to anybody's fault, but people start getting some of these things wrong. So it was very important for me to lead from that office and say, hey, like, I want to let people know what this stuff is. If all they do is come into a full day course with me, and they actually leave going, oh, I actually know what whip management looks like, I actually know what full kitting looks like, then to me that's success.
Right. Yeah, okay, that makes good sense. So maybe you said there were 4 areas that you train people on. I'm guessing one is full kitting. One
Yes.
is, yeah. So could you tell me about those? Could you give me a quick instruction on those 4 areas?
Sure.
Because I think people would find that really interesting, especially the full kit, because that's such a good idea, and it's so
Yeah,
intuitive. And you go,
yeah,
so go for it.
absolutely. So we always start off with 5 focusing steps in the course.
Cool.
And Vinny Montero, one of my mentors in theory constraints, he came up with this game where you move chips along an assembly line, poker chips, and you count. And this game that just it brings everything to light, right? We try to play a lot of games, do a lot of activities in the course to make it fun, because death by PowerPoint, nobody's going to learn anything from that. So we go from there, and then we go into our work in process lesson, talking about work in process for the folks that are actually doing the work, but equally as important is with work in process for our managers. So management attention, what does that look like? If I'm a what we call an expediter, and I drive maintainers around on the flight line in a truck, and I drop one person off here, 2 off on this aircraft, so on and so forth, and I'm managing 8 different aircrafts, my head's going to be spinning, and I'm not going to be able to react to my maintainers in an effective way. So we talk a lot about that management attention piece, and kind of consolidating that, or finding that right number, right? And we don't go too much into Little's Law, because we don't want people to think that there needs to be an exact science when figuring out your work in process.
I like that.
Start by just cut it in half, or cut it in, cut a third off of it, and see what that looks like. And understand that this is going to be an ongoing process of understanding our processes, and seeing what works best for us when it comes to implementing theory constraints concepts. So from there, from the work in process lesson, then we go into full kitting. And that's my favorite one. I love full kitting, because full kitting goes hand in hand with work in process. If you are only doing less work by managing your work in process, then what I always say is you're just doing less work. But if you're full kitting that work, then that's where you can marry those 2 concepts, and you can be the most effective. And if you're full kitting correctly, you are going to be managing your whip naturally. Because when I lead a group of maintainers and I say, okay, we're going to go work on replacing a wheel and tire assembly, right? Something very normal, very routine. It's easy to get in this, okay, I got it. I know what tools I need, yada, yada, I'll go out there and we'll do it. But then you go out to the aircraft and you realize you don't have all the tools you need. You realize I could use another person. The jack I need to get the tire off the ground is not out here. So now I'm waiting for that support. So we always say, look, with full kitting, before you go out there, call our ground equipment specialists and have them drop off the equipment you need out there. Make sure you have every tool you're going to need, so that you don't have to create that white space, that delay, and go back into the building, because that's all traveling back and forth. And then make sure you have all the people out there, and qualified people, proficient people, who are going to get you through that task as soon as possible. So that's what we talk about with full kitting. And then I even like to break it down even simpler. I talk about in my courses, if you ever watch cooking videos on YouTube, or you watch Gordon Ramsay or Bobby Flay or whoever, right? They get through cooking something pretty quickly. But I've been in my kitchen, right? Everything is already ready. But I've been in my kitchen, and I've been like, okay, step 1, I need a half a teaspoon of cumin. Okay, well, let me get that out. And then, right, and you go through, and before you know it, a 30-minute recipe takes you an hour and a half, because you're just not prepared. So that's what full kitting is. It's having everything in dishes. It's having everything measured out, ready to go. That way, it's just adding it to the pot, cooking it, and then dishing it out.
I love that. You just reminded me, last week I went for a barbecue with a friend at a local beach, and we took I organized everything. I went there. I remembered the matches, but I forgot the plates. You know, we still managed to have a barbecue, but if that had
Right.
been something, if we'd forgotten the matches, that would have been a, you know, how were we going to light the barbecue? Um,
Right.
yeah, yeah, it's a really simple concept, isn't it? But and I like the way you've made it real, just by something that people would. Oh, of course you need those things. But then what I also like when you're describing that, Derek, is there's so many more moving pieces. It's not just the equipment; it's the I guess there's parts you might need. There's
Absolutely.
different people with different skill sets that you need, and there's just so many pieces where if one of those is missing, you grind to a halt, or at least you get delayed. Yeah. Okay. So full
Yeah,
kit, beautiful,
absolutely.
nice explanation. Love that. So there
Right.
must be
And
one more, is there?
so there's actually two more.
Ah,
We talk about resource pooling. So,
right.
one thing we're really great at in the Air Force is creating specialists, right? Creating specialized maintainers, specialized
Yes.
airmen who can go out and execute at a high level. But then naturally, as people, what we do is we silo ourselves and go, oh no, I'm a crew chief. I only do crew chief stuff. I'm
Yes.
a hydraulic specialist. I only do hydraulic stuff.
Yes.
And we kind of refuse to help each other. And it's almost if you could be a fly on the wall on a deployment with aircraft maintainers all in a building, it's like gang wars out there. Like we're just drawing a line in the sand. You don't come into my office, I'm not going to go into your office, right?
Yep.
But then once we leave our work area and we go see other, like the people who work in finance, we're like, you don't talk to us. We're maintainers. We're very
Yeah. Yeah.
herd mentality people. So it's quite an interesting dynamic. But that silo thing, right, that I'm talking about, it's very real. So with resource pooling, we aim to break those silos and say, hey, look, we're all maintainers. We're all responsible for the success of this product, of this process. And so when an
Yeah.
aircraft comes into our hangar, we are all responsible for doing this. So how can we help you get through your piece of the puzzle faster? And how can
Yes.
you help us get through our piece of the puzzle? And all while not sacrificing any safety or quality, because that's the
Yeah.
biggest thing is anything we do when we talk about change management, whether it's a CPI event or a ToC consult or whatever,
Mhm.
innovation, we have to keep that safety and quality piece right in the forefront, and make sure that we build our left and right boundaries around that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That makes so. There's all that's the unnegotiables, really. The yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
So you just describe something that's so most people there, they've heard of ToC, you know, and they've probably read the goal, so they know, oh yeah,
Right.
factories, and I can see aircraft maintenance. Okay, oh yeah, I can picture an aircraft maybe moving around. But you describe something interesting there, which is that the resources, which are the people that are working on it, they're not fixed in a spot
Right.
like a machine that you might expect in a factory.
Sure.
They're moving around. So the
Yeah.
resources are actually the things that's moving. Actually, and it's a silly little thing, but uh, does, so I can't imagine what it's like there. Does the aircraft sit in one spot and everyone comes to it, or does it move around, or
So,
what's it look
so
like on the ground?
yeah. So for my experience as mainly a backshop maintainer, I've done plenty of time out on the flight line, where
Hmm.
it is more dynamic, right, out on the flight line because the aircraft are taking off from
Right.
one parking spot and they're going to land at a different parking spot. They might land at a different location, and that there might be aircraft maintainers with that aircraft that go with it. But
Okay.
from my experience with an isochronal inspection piece, it's static. We pull it into a hangar. We
Yep.
might do some work. We do some work on it before we pull it into the hangar just to get it ready.
Yep.
But then we pull it into the hangar, and then it's going to be in that hangar for however long it
Right.
needs to be. If we're all doing our jobs correctly, not very long at all.
Yeah.
But and then we'll pull it out. Like I said, we do the ops checks on it, so we're going to run engines on it. Can't do that in a
Mhm.
hangar, so there's just a lot less dynamic activity happening there with an aircraft in a
Right.
big inspection process like that.
You've got people coming to so rather than the factory
Yes.
where the pieces are moving through the factory and the resources are static,
Right.
mostly. you've got the other way around. You've got this piece that's sitting there, and then
Yes.
people move to it, and they've got all of the different resources. So how much? So I'm just imagining that there. If you're allowed to say, do you have one common bottleneck? I know you've done the 5 focus. Is there one thing you look like? Is it something like space, hangar space, or is there one particular person, Bob, who's the entire world revolves around him? Yeah.
Well, so that's a great question, right? Because as we've seen, everything's different. So at Fairchild, the hangar space was not a bottleneck for us. We had
Right.
different bottlenecks. What we do see in the Air Force a lot is, or in our maintenance community, is just, we're a little, we feel, everybody feels like we're undermanned, right? Which is just that classic symptom of being in a vicious cycle.
Yes.
Is you feel like you don't have enough people. And so that's what I really love about ToC is you can kind of open these doors and show people, like open the window, let some fresh air. And it's like, hey, actually, we do have enough people to do this. We maybe have more than enough people to do this. And that's going to benefit us down the road now that we understand that.
Mm.
But for like here in Okinawa, like we have found that for that same process, hangar space does become somewhat of a bottleneck. And so we've designed, or we're working on designing some solutions to kind of, alleviate that, right? Or make that bottleneck work for us.
Yes, yeah, and I imagine if you're doing things like the full kit, and there'll be some coordination around getting the right people and focusing on is not diluting your effort across a lot of things. You're going to get a lot more use out of that fixed space anyway.
Right.
But then over time, I suppose if you get more demand come in, is that something? Where does? Sorry, I'm just trying to. No, I won't ask that because I don't know how to ask that question. Okay. I'll ask you a different one. Is there so you've got full kit? Like, do you therefore? Is there something as simple as like checklists that people work off to put that in place?
Yeah. So that was something great when we started this back in Spokane, and everybody was new to the whole the ToC arena. And we put 1 to 2 people in charge of full kitting and said, this is your job.
Oh.
And they naturally created checklists for themselves and created checklists so that the next person that came in to do that job was going to have that there for them. So we suggest checklists for full kitting. And we say, hey, we've seen this be used and it's very effective. And so we think this might be something that you can go after if you'd like. We've also talked about building full kit teams. You're going to pull from your resources and it's going to feel wrong. It's going to feel counterintuitive. But, out here where this is a bigger installation. And so in order for us to ensure that we are eliminating as many delays as possible, a full kit team makes sense out here, because then you have somebody to drive, all the way down to get the parts because the parts are not conveniently located. And then you can keep the maintainers working the aircraft. You can send people all around to go get what you need without breaking the progress you're making on the task itself.
Right, that makes sense. So that would be, you would then have to move, I guess, from probably a mode of thinking that previously was keep everyone busy, and keep everyone in their specialization, to moving one where you're now focusing on the flow of, you want to be ticking off the number of aircraft that you're getting through a week or a day, and that's your focus. So it's more on the flow of the work rather than the utilization. Did that kind of move? Sorry, I'm just trying to think away. If things calm down since you've done this, or if things sped up maybe and calm down at the same time, or?
Yeah, so there's always, that kind of rough period when you start implementing change and you start introducing change into an organization, especially an organization like aircraft maintenance, because we are very prideful people and we have a lot of really great people in aircraft maintenance that do a great job. And one of the things, that I hear a lot in the courses we teach is, hey, any good expediter does that. Any good production
Yeah.
superintendent does that. This is
Yep.
not, you're not teaching me anything new. You're just naming
Mhm.
it.
Yes.
I understand that.
Yep.
However, we all get better when everybody can be that good expediter, when everybody can
Yeah.
be that good technician, right? That's where we're trying to convey is that, look, if like you have this skill set, we want everybody to have that skill set. And realistically, is everybody going to be able to be a peak performer? No. But how can we utilize their skill set to get the most out of them? And
Love
there's
that.
there's always that, the perception historically, I think probably since the Wright brothers invented the airplane is, hey, we have to be busy. We have to be busy fixing this thing, but busy doesn't equal productive. And so
Yeah.
that's changing that perception of you might have some folks sitting around, but they're waiting to execute their part. And when they
The
do, it's going to make us so much more efficient down the road with this
so
specific task.
that makes it. So I'm imagining Formula One cars racing around, and the job is to keep them
Right.
moving. So you have
Right.
a pit crew that's sitting there, and they're all prepped, and they know what they need to do next. They're full kitted
Right.
out, and then when the car arrives in the pit lane, they pounce on it and they act,
Yeah.
and then it goes off. And I imagine they probably then have a little bit of a rest and get ready for the
Exactly.
next. Yeah, so you're going to have that kind of pit crew mentality in there. Okay, that's cool. Okay,
Yeah,
could I get you
absolutely.
to roll back and tell me about that?
Sure.
Just summarize the you said there were four main areas
Yeah.
that you teach is the kind of like the standard ToC kit of beginner's knowledge that we want everyone to do. So could you just summarize them for us?
Yeah. So we talk about the five focusing steps, right, of theory constraints. And
Yep.
we do an activity with that one. And then we move on to the work in process piece, right? WIP management. We do an activity with that one. Full kitting,
Yep.
which is just a discussion, right? And that is when we get more into like a open room discussion. And we love to hear like our maintainers' pain points and what they're experiencing out
Yes.
there. And
Yep.
just talking through that and is very, very good. And then resource pooling,
Yep.
right? And so we talk about resource. We play another activity, do another activity, resource pooling, and then the last one that we didn't talk about is I change it depending on my audience. Is we might
Mm-hmm.
talk about aggressive scheduling with the buffer.
Right.
If we're looking at more of a MRO type project aircraft where there's gated a
Right.
gated process,
Yep.
or we talk about dynamic bundling. Where if we have so with our aircraft, we have different inspections. You have the big inspection I've been talking about, but
Mm-hmm.
you have smaller inspections that maybe take an hour, maybe take a day, maybe take a week to do over
Right.
time. And so what we aim to do is pull all those inspections in
Ah,
to a time period and say, if we can get them all done now, then we've opened ourselves up a window to
yes.
fly this aircraft and provide that aircraft availability to the mission and just keep it flowing.
Okay.
Now, understanding that Murphy's Law is going to happen
Yes.
and things are going to happen, but guess what? If we don't have resources dedicated to all these little inspections throughout the day or throughout the month or however long of a time period, we've built in capacity to handle Murphy's Law.
Yep. Yep. That makes sense. Okay. That's
Right.
nice. Okay. So if you've got your, roughly, if you're allowed to reveal such things, broadly speaking, how many people are you talking about training here? Is it 5, 50, 500?
Oh,
Just
so well,
broadly.
we've trained over 500 folks so far,
Right. Yep.
but we have many more than that.
Mm.
Well over the 1,000 mark in our maintenance group. We have a very large maintenance group. It's the largest combat Air Force maintenance group in the Air Force. So
Right.
we have a pretty good group of people, a great group of people, and we have a large plot of land out here that we
Yes.
operate off of. So
Wow. Okay. So I kind of not surprised by your answer, but my brain is struggling to, put geography around that, because yeah, okay. So is it all in one spot, or like you said, is there aircraft you might do some here and then they fly somewhere else, and then they move around and get various things done? Is it a mixture of those?
Yeah, everything is spread out, and again, that's something that differs like from base to base. It just depends on the
Yeah.
resources available and how we're utilizing those resources. But
Mm.
yeah, we have, like I said, we have a lot of real estate, and we have a lot of different specialties out here, different aircraft. So that's how we operate out here in the Pacific.
That's very okay. That's very interesting. Now, I'm going to ask if people got some questions coming up, but I've got there's one that I'm wondering if it's something that's wrong with my head, and I always feel awkward when I talk about the theory of constraints, because I'm worried that the moment I get to the word "of," people have heard the theory and they will have fallen asleep. How do people react to theory of constraints? What's the like Six Sigma sounds so much sexier.
So yeah, the name thing. So a couple of things with that, and that's a great question. I love talking about this piece. We usually open up with this piece. Gerard Carissio, who Brandon knows very well, we were all in Spokane together. Gerard and I came out here to Japan together. We followed Brandon, but we're a little bit more south. But he always comes in and talks about theory of constraints, right? You don't theory of relativity things, right? You don't theory of constraints things. We're teaching you the concepts. And like you mentioned earlier, once the theory is done, now you go do, right? Now you come up with your solutions within the concepts given, and then you go do it. So people don't get hung up on the name too much. And what we found is, oftentimes in the Air Force, when you give something a sexy name and it sounds neat, it becomes a buzzword, and it becomes just something that people feel like, I can ride this out. I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to, because change is hard. We all know that. And you're always going to have people with their heels dug in. And when they hear these, hot buzzwords, they go, okay, I can just kind of wait this out if I want to, right? And everybody's different. We get a lot of people that are on board. We get people who are not on board, but we're able to kind of pull them over.
Yep.
And we found very, very few people that are still kind of not wanting to get on board. But luckily we've been fortunate enough to show some great results as well. But yeah, so people don't have an issue with theory of constraints with the name, especially when you explain to them that it's been around since the early 80s. And we talk about Eliyahu Goldratt and how he kind of came to do all this. And so, look, this is used in retail. It's used in, commercial aircraft. It's used in warehouses, like it's used in medical, like this is not something new. This is not some, new fancy thing that we're using in the Air Force because somebody thought it was a good idea.
Cool. I like that. And then you dig straight in, and in a short period of time, you give them insights and practical ways to use those insights. And it's kind of like they can see the world slightly differently when they go back to work afterwards, or actually quite differently, really, I would imagine. Yeah. Okay, cool. That's interesting. Yeah. I've got a question here from Graham Scott. Do you want to ask that out loud, Graham? You all right with that? Would you just like me to read it?
Yeah, that's fine. Derrick, I was thinking about the idea of full kitting for aircraft maintenance. Presumably, until you start tearing it to bits, you don't know what needs replacing. And to have absolutely everything you might possibly need, you'd just about be able to build a new aircraft out of the spare parts. So what I'm wondering, do you find that the full kitting is enough 8 times out of 10? Do you aim for 80%? We'll get it all first time? At what stage do you compromise between having too many spare parts and not being able to complete the maintenance? Does that sort of make
Yeah,
sense?
yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question. So for us, we definitely don't have an issue with having too many spare parts. And we
Okay.
always full kit to the best of our capabilities. So when we go out there, we full kit to go troubleshoot, a problem. And we know that when we
Okay.
open up the aircraft and the aircraft kind of shows us what's wrong with it, it's going to introduce new problems. And then we understand that, okay, so let's get into our supply system and
Yeah.
if we don't have that part on hand, let's order it. And then we understand, are we waiting for that part to come out? Especially here in Japan, it takes a little bit longer for things to get to us. So it helps us better manage our WIP by saying, we've gotten to this point with this aircraft, we're waiting on this part. We are now going to assign our resources to a new priority aircraft that we're going to be able to get up off the ground a lot quicker than this one that we're waiting on a part for. So I always tell our folks, we full kit to the best of our capabilities, to what we know.
Yep.
Okay. And you've also, presumably, if the part isn't there, you've already explained that you have spare people who can go and get the part if it's on the base somewhere.
Yes, absolutely.
So that must help. Yeah. Okay. That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Any other questions, just pop them in there. I'm wondering, you said you've got great results within reason of whatever you're allowed to share. What kind of what I presume aircraft availability would be right up there. Is there anything else that you can share just to give people an idea of? Is it 5%?
Yeah.
better?
So I'll go back to I'll go back to my first, foray into theory of constraints, working with Sridhar and Josh and Eric, and our great team out there at Fairchild is, we were doing our inspections historically over the calendar days. It was 52 days where this aircraft was not available to fly. We did a CPI event, and we got that number down to around 30. And so actually, let me back up and explain a little bit more. We were doing enough, like we were doing roughly one inspection a month, and then some things started happening. We started getting more aircraft. And so that number became we were projecting over 20 aircraft to do in a couple of years ago. And so that's where that was perfect timing for Goldratt to come in and help us out. And so when we did Little's Law, when Sridhar walked us through all the numbers and did Little's Law and said, hey, this is, you're going to do this many aircraft next year. We do Little's Law. That's every 18 calendar days, you have to push an aircraft out of the hangar. And we were like, well, we were doing it in 52 and now we're at 30. And you're telling me you want me to cut that improved number almost in half. And so, luckily for all of us, Sridhar goes, can we do that? And me being a very optimistic person, and my good friend and colleague, Chris Jones, being a kind of whatever, man, he goes, yeah, sure, let's give it a shot. And so we went to work designing how we were going to pull resources and how we were going to full kit and how we were going to structure the inspection. And it took time. It wasn't perfect right out the gate. It took time, and it took a lot of deliberate focus and a lot of follow through on our parts as kind of like project managers to go down there. And then, finally things started clicking. Right before 2020 hit, things started clicking. And, now at this point, for almost 2 years, they've been doing their aircraft in an average of 15 to 16 days.
Wow. Okay.
So from the 52 calendar day mark, it was about a 76% increase or improvement on the flow of our inspections.
It's quite impressive, isn't it?
It's like, I feel like it's just dumb luck. Like we just fell into it and it worked out, but we stayed with it and we worked hard. And kudos to all the people out there still getting it done. But yeah, it's been really exciting to have been a part of a process like that.
So from that point of view, so I'm really interested in the availability kind of thing, and just for maybe for people listening, the moment I had a realization about availability was when I lived in Dublin in Ireland, and they put in a bus lane, and they along the main roads going in. They said, that's for buses, for no one else, and it annoyed a lot of people. But it probably did the equivalent of doubling the number of bus trips they had without having to double the number of buses that they had. And so it's a similar thing for you guys. You actually need fewer aircraft to have the same flying capacity, because that they're not on the ground as much. You're getting them in, you're getting them out, and presumably it's free capacity for your operational aircraft. I guess that's the way you look at it. Or
Yeah, just so again, it's one of those things, and we say it all the time. I joked a lot with Austin and Benny when they were out here. Is my answer to all your questions is it depends, because it just depends. Like if you have a unit that has 5 aircraft, what does successful aircraft availability look there? Or if you have one with 80 aircraft, what does that success look like when we talk about aircraft availability? But realistically, if we boil it down for here in the Pacific, our aircraft availability success, is based off our mission, and that's, ensuring a free and open Indo-Pacific out here. So if we can get enough aircraft to the fight to make that happen, then that's success for us, right? So again, it's a dumb answer, but it depends. So
yes. Cool. Okay. No, it's not a dumb answer, but that's always the case. If you gave a dumb answer, you wouldn't have the word "it depends" in it.
I'm a little self-deprecating, Clark. So
excellent. That's where we like that. We like that. Cool. Okay. Now I got a question here from Robert. When you do an initial inspection, do you inspect by failure risk type? And he says, for instance, in mining, where Robert works, we do electrical, then mechanical, presumably because it's based on the risk. So is it a risk-based inspection, or do you just look at everything? I think
so. So what we utilize in with the aircraft, because we, especially with aircraft maintenance, we have people's lives in our hand. We have very strict guidance that we go off of, and so we have what we call troubleshooting trees. And that is all based off of, studied risk assessments, historical data of what parts are breaking on the aircraft. And so, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in that realm at all. We have specialists, our hydraulic folks, our electrical folks, our jet engine mechanics. They work in these troubleshooting trees, and it'll tell them like, okay, this is the part, this is what you're experiencing. Do this. Did this happen? Yes or no? And you just go through there. And then as well as you get folks that just become so proficient and they get to know these aircraft so well that they're able to follow that guidance to a T, and also input their experiences, and kind of, it helps us full kit for things better when we know, hey, we're going to go out here and it's probably going to be this. So I'm going to full kit myself for that.
Okay. Yeah. Good. That's good.
I hope I answered that question.
Sounds pretty good to me. I've got another one come in here from Maxime, but I want to bounce off what you said just a moment ago. I think. No, I don't. No, I figured that out for myself, and it would be better for everyone if I didn't. Okay, so I've got a question here from Maxime. In a production environment, in a factory, you can quite easily identify your bottlenecks by looking at how many parts are waiting in front of the machine. Cool. In aircraft MRO, it's a different story. How do you teach your people to identify the bottleneck?
In an MRO process. Okay, yeah. So that's a great question. We always talk about, like, we always talk about goals. So we start out talking about the goal, like, which, to what you posted on LinkedIn this morning, Clark, was the solution salad, right? Is we've, especially myself, been guilty of throwing solutions where I didn't know problems were. And so we start with what's the goal, right? And for us, it became that 18-day mark, right? That 18-day calendar mark. Okay.
Yep.
So let's go out and let's start doing it. And let's go to Gemba and let's walk the process and see, okay, we Gantt chart out our flow. So we have all these work cards that tell us what to inspect. And so we start looking and go, okay, so utilizing our experts, right? Our subject matter experts, how long would it take us to get through this piece? And they'll give us, in a perfect world scenario, it's this much. Okay, cool. So then let's go measure that. Did we hit that mark, or did it go longer? We've identified it should take us 2 days to inspect the entire aircraft. Did we go 4 days? Did we go 2 days? What is it? Okay, so why? And then we start looking at, where are these bottlenecks? Like, what is causing the delay? So it's really like it's boring, but it's almost a lot of trial and error. But it's understanding the processes, and it's collecting the data, and it's a continued effort.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, because if you're trying to do that, at some point, you've already identified that where you are at the moment, the hangar space is
right.
is basically the constraint, well, at least
sure.
The most obvious one. And then inside that, you can go through and effectively it's like that sharpening the saw. You're just chipping away little bit by little bit by little bit, and you can only do that by you chip away one bit, and then that reveals the next bit that you need to work on.
Yeah,
so it's an ongoing kind of process of just getting better by better.
Right. And okay. my old group commander who pulled us all into this ToC adventure, Michael O'Connor, he used to talk about feeding the snake. So we're going to have problems all throughout the process when it's an MRO type project. But let's start at the beginning, because the second and third order effects that what we do in the beginning as we adjust is going to echo across the entire process. Right. So that's always something that's stuck with me is how do you feed the snake?
Very good. Okay, yeah, that's really cool. Now, I got one last question, and then I think we might just wrap it up. You don't just this is blasphemous. You don't just do ToC. You do other stuff. Six Sigma. You've got green belts. You've got black belts. Lean Six Sigma. Presumably, you've got the whole lot. You've got like a word salad of improvement methodologies. Do they conflict? Right. Or do they all actually really work quite well together?
So like the big thing that we find with it is I do find it works well together. But we get people come in and go, we always ask people when we first start off, what do you want to get out of being here? And what do you know about theory constraints? And they go, it's just like CPI, right? And you go, it's not. And I use my Batman analogies, right? So, CPI to me is giving you tools, fishbone diagrams, put butcher paper on the wall, ask your 5 whys, root cause analysis. Like there's so many different things in Lean Six Sigma tools you can use to get to the problem, like to get through your 8-step problem solving method. And for Batman, that's like his utility belt, right? He's got the batarang, he's got the keys to the Batmobile, he's got the grappling hook, everything he needs to defeat his enemies. But ToC is like Batman's mind, right? Because what makes Batman the world's greatest detective is not all the tools he has around his belt, but it's how he is able to think through clues and look at it. And so then I always say as well, is I like to lead from a ToC standpoint because I want to know what my problems are, right? So again, using Batman, doing a CPI event without utilizing some theory of constraints mindset, like looking at it through that lens is like Batman going through, Gotham City and just beating everybody up and going, one of them's going to be the Joker, one of them's going to be the Riddler, and we'll get it eventually, right?
Beautiful.
So I just like
love
that
this analogy.
Yeah.
So we're all bat people, really.
Yeah, we all just live in Gotham City, and that's
actually I love that analogy though, because that's the fundamental thing of what ToC gives you. It gives you the focus, but you've got this tool belt of all sorts of other things. I don't know where Robin fits into this story, But Robert Bolton reckons he's Bruce Wayne. Yeah. Okay, fair enough. Hey, I reckon if you is there anything you would like to add there? Because I feel like we've got loads of goodies out of you, and I love the perspective that you brought. Is there anything you want to add? And then before we wrap up.
No, I don't think so. I appreciate you having me on, and I guess while I have the venue, I just want to thank everybody who's allowed me to become part of this and get into this extremely exciting world of theory of constraints and process improvement. I mentioned them all, but Sridhar, Josh, Vinny, Austin, Brandon Greenwald, Gerard Curcio, Michael O'Connor, Bill Ray, Dave Barton, Alex Pagano. There's countless, right? I'm going to forget them. It's like an Oscar speech, but I really could not be more grateful to have been brought in and to be able to do this for a living. It's very exciting, and I love every day of it. So thank you to all of you. And Clark, thank you for having me on here. It's been a blast.
It's a delight. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing that stuff. What I love about it is and I know Top Gun was the other guys.
Yes,
with
we are not naval aviators.
Okay, is it? I know. I'm glad we've sorted that out. But that's all I know about what you guys do. You know, yeah, and it's just such an interesting world. And actually, I do have another question. Is it
okay?
Your stuff you do, is that different to what commercial aircraft maintenance people will do? Is it similar, different?
No, I mean there's similar work. We don't do a lot of baggage handling and stuff like that, but you see the folks out there with the wands marshaling the aircraft, accepting the aircraft in. We do a lot of that, and then what most of us don't see is all the work that those civilian maintainers do behind the scenes. Yeah, and it's pretty similar. The big thing, the difference between the Air Force and Delta is Delta makes a lot of money doing what they do, right? And our motivation is just executing the mission and taking care of our people.
Yes.
So that's where it becomes a little different.
It's different. And I hear that when I talk with you guys, the mission is so often the word, it sums up what you're trying to do. Even if we don't know what the mission is, you've got this, you guys do, you it's all very clear to you, and everything's in pursuit of the mission. Whereas I guess in the other places, they might, if you were going to go ToC wise, you might say, they're interested in making money, but you have a different mission and you're using that same thinking. But because your missions are different, your goals are different, there's going to be some differences. Anyway, I'm starting. The coffee I've been drinking throughout this is starting to kick in. Can I just get everyone just to say a quick thank you here in the chat, and we'll wrap it up, and I'll get this out on YouTube. And then just, Derrick, for your benefit, when we say goodbye, don't hang up.
Okay, we'll do.
We'll just have a minute. We'll just have a minute.
And I think Robert had a follow-up question. If Robert, you want to.
Oh, sorry, did too. Do you want to? Does the troubleshooting TRR lead to checklist for your maintenance team?
Yeah, so I think that's. I think the troubleshooting tree, it is almost like a checklist in itself, but what we're able to do is take that knowledge and again the experience, and it helps us make checklists for understanding what we need when we go out to do those certain tasks. I hope that answers that question, and feel free to message me on LinkedIn if there are any other questions. I'm more than happy to answer those.
Cool, that's good. Yeah, for the sake of that, you're on LinkedIn, DERRICK BROOKE. I'm sure there's an extra R and an extra E in there that catches me every time.
Yeah.
You're easy to track down, and I just want to say, and I hope I say this correctly, Mitsuko.
Yes.
I think you know each other through Goldratt Consulting. Is that right?
Yes, she contacted me through LinkedIn, and we've chatted a couple of times.
There you go. So thank you, says Mitsuko. Scott says, thanks, Derrick and Clark. This was very interesting. I appreciate how real world it is. And that's absolutely, when we first started chatting, it was just your world is different, but it's real. And I think a lot of people will learn from that. I got another comment coming here from Tony, who says, very interesting seeing this all play out in the real world. Again, Robert says, great session, Derrick. And there are a few others there that I've missed, but look, thank you everyone for turning up. You'll all be mildly famous on YouTube in a few days. Yeah, thank you. And if we can probably wrap up now. Maxime says, thanks for sharing. It was very interesting. Yeah, and it was. So thank you, Derrick.
Thank you.
See you guys. And we just got a few just disappearing. Do you want to hang around a minute, Graham?
Yeah, I'd love to.
Cool. Just one moment. There we go. I just thought I'd introduce you to Graham. He's in the background. Graham's here in New Zealand as well. You may, I don't know if you've had a chance to see any of the YouTube videos and stuff, but Graham does a lot of the particularly good ones.
Yeah, I've seen quite a few of the of Graham Scott on all the YouTube videos you post, so somewhat familiar. Yeah.
So, sorry about that.
No, stop.
There you go, Derrick. That was absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Really, really interesting. And I know for you, it's all just the stuff you do all day, day by day by day. But I imagine Graham's having that same reaction, going, "Oh, I like that." And it's just a different angle, but the same stuff. And I love the way you've broken it down into 5 takeaways. And you go, "Hey guys, get these ideas in your head, and then you'll be able to think for yourself." I just think that's brilliant. Yeah. So good job. You've done us all proud.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate it very much.
I think